Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Meet Your SheHero. I'm Lori Nelson. I'm the Executive Director of SheHeroes, and we are delighted to have with us today FBI Special Agent Marty Parker. And we're going to do things a little bit differently today. I'm going to shift the moderator position over to Dr. Michelle Krause, who is going to take over shortly. But in the meantime, before we meet Marty, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Sophia Yan, our founder, who would like to say hello.
Hey, everybody. Just wanted to give you the background on SheHeroes. It was started a while back by 3 MIT female alumni who were like, when somebody Googles female physicist on the internet, they should find a video of a female physicist talking enthusiastically about why she enjoys her job, what obstacles she faced to get there, and why a young person might want to follow in her footsteps. And thus, SheHeroes was born. So I've had the privilege of chairing this for a long time, but now I've passed that on to Dr. Michelle Krause, our board member, but I still remain a board member. And I thank you all for joining us today. And Dr. Krause, take it away. And always claim your titles, ladies.
Oh, and I owe my title to Dr. Jill Biden because she has claimed her PhD. I honor that and claim it on a daily basis. Anyway, welcome. Welcome, everybody. We have the honor and really the delight of having Special Agent of the FBI, Marty Parker, joining us. The topic is human trafficking and child abduction. There is probably no more important topic in today's world for parents, for teachers, for administrators. Marty has been with the FBI for 24 years. And now Marty's going to talk for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and really take a deep dive into this material. The most important thing that we want you to take away from this is that this can happen anywhere. It could be your child, your beloved child. It could be your neighbor. It could be an affluent family. It could be impoverished. It could be anyone. And what's happening online is a revolution. And we want to make sure that you have the tools that you need to keep your child safe and for your child to keep themselves safe. Marty, I turn this over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Krause, and thank all of you for being here today. Just a little bit about me. Yes, I've been an agent for 24 years. Clearly, I started when I was very young. But I have worked child exploitation and human trafficking pretty much my entire career. Once I got into it, there was nothing else I'd rather do in the Bureau because I think it's so meaningful. And once you actually return a child back home or help a child get to a better place because they're getting exploited or whatever, you just need that one win to make everything worth it. And so it's been a very fulfilling career. And even though I'm eligible for retirement, I really don't have any plans to go because I love what I do so much. So I did prepare a presentation. There is so much to talk about in this topic. It's actually a lot of different topics. So I'm only going to kind of touch the surface on a few things. But again, the topic kind of is how to keep your kids safe and how, any kids listening, how to keep yourself safe. And it all kind of revolves around the internet these days. So as far as what the FBI investigates when it comes to child exploitation and human trafficking, it's a lot of stuff. In my office, so I'm part of the San Francisco field office for the FBI. We're then broken down into kind of smaller sub offices called resident agencies. I am in the Oakland resident agency. Our squad, which is all child exploitation and human trafficking, is based in both San Francisco proper and in two different resident agencies, Oakland and San Jose. So all of us, and there's about 10 agents and then a few analysts. These are all the things that we work for the entire Bay Area. So first, under human trafficking, we have sex trafficking, which is then broken down a little further into domestic sex trafficking, and that can be of juveniles or adults, and then foreign sex trafficking. Now, most people, when they think of trafficking, think of a cargo ship filled with women from China coming over to the US. That's really not what we see. There is some of that, not a cargo ship typically, but typically what we see, and it's not just here in the Bay Area, it's across the country, because I actually worked at our headquarters in our child exploitation human trafficking unit. So I got to see things on a more global level or national level. What we see on a day-to-day basis is the domestic sex trafficking, and these are women and children who are being forced to have sex estrangement for money, is what it comes down to. Sometimes it's not necessarily a physical force. It can be coercion, manipulation, and that's what we see the most often. We do see that the people who are forcing them or manipulating them to do this, called pimps, sometimes will be violent with them. But on a day-to-day basis, you may not even see that. You may just see this girl who appears to be prostituting because she wants to, and she's making money off of it, presumably, right? And just has this boyfriend on the side, and it's really not what you think. And we'll get into that a little bit. But anyway, that is kind of like the biggest issue as far as human trafficking that we deal with in the FBI. We do also deal with foreign human trafficking, and those are individuals coming from out of the country who are then being sex trafficked. We see that a lot in massage parlors, nail salons, karaoke clubs. In some states that are closer to the border, such as Arizona, Mexico, Southern California, you also see these cantinas, which are bars where they also employ usually Hispanic females to have sex with the patrons there. So we do see that as well. Labor trafficking is another form of human trafficking, and we'll get into that as well. All right, and then the other side of things that we work on our squad is the child exploitation side. CSAM, the old name for CSAM is child pornography. You don't really hear that anymore because it kind of legitimizes it by calling it pornography. But what it is images and videos of children getting sexually abused. And it's usually for somebody else's pornographic edification, if you will. So instead of calling it pornography, we now say exactly what it is. It's like, no, these are images and videos of a child being sexually abused. A lot of the people on my squad deal with this because it's so prevalent out there, and the internet has made it just way too easy to distribute this kind of information or this material. We also investigate internet predators. These are individuals who are looking to lure children into sex. Sextortion of juveniles. Now, sextortion is a huge thing. We're going to talk about that a little more. Since we're on a child exploitation squad, we just deal with the juvenile part of that. And then also kidnapping, child abductions. I am on a team called CARD, which is the Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team. And I've been on this team since we started back in 2005. Anytime a child goes missing anywhere in the country, we can deploy as a team to help that local agency with resources, consulting with them because we have the experience and know-how, and doing whatever we can to help find that child right away.
There's a question that's just come in. Could you pinpoint some of the ages? Are they middle school? Are they high school? Or is there something that's really the sweet spot of these predators?
That's a very good question. And the answer is it's limitless. For human trafficking, I have seen kids as young as 12 be trafficked into prostitution. On the internet predator side, it's as low as you can go, and that's the same with CSAM as well. There's some horrible images and videos of people abusing infants, for instance. And so there's no sweet spot. If you're a kid, you are vulnerable, which is scary for sure. So human trafficking, again, there's a lot of misconceptions about what it is. I have put up here the federal definition. I know it's kind of long. Basically, what it's saying is procuring or somehow taking somebody for some kind of commercial purpose for exploitation. So what we see the most is on the sex side, where you are taking somebody saying, okay, you are going to work as a prostitute and then give me all the profits. So that's the exploitation, pure and simple. The big part of it is that there has to be force, fraud, or coercion. That's a big element. If you can't show that, if the victim is over the age of 18, then we can't call it trafficking. There are a lot of situations out there where you might have an adult female who is prostituting. She's selling her body for sex, and she may even have a pimp, somebody who is helping her in this. But if there's no force, fraud, or coercion, if we can't show that she's not a very willing participant in this whole thing, then we can't call it trafficking. Now, if the person is under the age of 18, then it's automatically trafficking, because someone under the age of 18 cannot legally consent to this. That makes our job a lot easier when it comes to prosecuting these cases, of course. And of course, because you're dealing with a more vulnerable population, you're dealing with children. It's something that, of course, we want to focus on anyway. A lot of the state laws mirror the federal law, and here in California, the state human trafficking law is very similar as well, and that's on purpose. That way we can kind of share cases. So for instance, I work with Oakland Police Department on a very regular basis. They might get a case, they start looking at it, and then decide, you know what, this would be a really good federal case, and they can give it to me. They've already started proving up all the elements of this case. And so it makes for a really easy transition for me to then adopt it on the federal side. The Polaris Project runs the National Human Trafficking Hotline. If you are not familiar with them and you are interested in learning more about human trafficking, this is a great site to go on. It's just polarisproject.org. And this hotline, you see the number on the screen here, it's posted all over the country, some places more than others. Here in Northern California, they do a pretty good job putting this number in places where potential victims might see it and they can call in tips. We partner with them quite often. Anytime a tip comes in that is relevant to the Bay Area, they will send it to me and a slew of other investigators for this area, so that that we can look into it a little more. And the great thing is, since they are national, we're able to get some pretty good statistics from them. These I know are a few years old now, but it shows kind of the top 3 types of trafficking. This is back in 2017, but it really hasn't changed much. And these are as far related to the tips that they receive. So you see that kind of the biggest portion of tips that they receive relates to sex trafficking. And then that top number there for escort services, those are individuals who are posting on websites. Residential, you'll see that, and sometimes there are brothels and apartment complexes. We see that a lot with Asian women who are being trafficked. And then outdoor solicitation, which is a really funny way to put it. But those are the individuals who are actually walking on a street looking for clients who are called Johns to pick them up. That street location, by the way, in case you ever hear the term, is called a track or a blade. So if someone's talking about the Oakland Blade, they're talking about International Boulevard, which is where the individuals who are involved in prostitution are kind of hanging out. And then you've got the Johns who are circling the block in their vehicles looking for the person that they want to pick up. On the other side of these stats, you see labor trafficking, and it's a lot smaller number. I do not believe it's because labor trafficking is not that big of a problem. I believe it's because they're not getting a lot of tips about it. It could be because they're not marketing their numbers or advertising their tip line in the proper places, but also the people who are involved in labor trafficking. These are people who don't have a lot of exposure to regular, life. They're usually kept in a very maybe agricultural setting where they're just not going to be out and about, and they're not going to be in a bus shelter where they see this number, for instance. So I like this slide because it shows that trafficking can affect anybody. It doesn't matter if you're an adult or a minor, male or female. And when you look at the race and ethnicity, it's all across the board. It's actually fairly even, right? With looks like Latinos are more represented than most, but it's really all across the board. This is not one gender's problem. It's not one race's problem. This is all of our problems. In the Bureau, we work the most sex trafficking cases versus labor. And again, I don't think it's because there aren't as many labor trafficking cases out there, but it's because they're a little more hidden. It's easier to find the sex trafficking cases for sure. And those are the reports that we get more often than not. So just real quick on labor, and I've got a bunch of info here, guys. So I'm going to go through some of this really quick. Again, you see where they're coming from. It's all over the place. Of course, here in California, we see more cases coming from Latin America because we share a border with Mexico. It makes sense, right? Victim gender, you see 62% of the victims in labor trafficking cases that we are working is female. However, again, I believe that that's not necessarily a great representation. I think that maybe the women are just reporting it more than the men. The big thing to keep in mind is that a lot of things might look like a labor trafficking situation, but unless you could say that there is force, fraud, or coercion by that employer, that it's probably just very poor working conditions. And we see that a lot. We get tips from people saying that they worked at Wendy's and the manager was really mean to them and made them work overtime. Sounds like a really bad job, but it's not that they're being forced or coerced into working there and probably not keeping their earnings or getting the earnings that they're supposed to have, which is what we see in an actual labor trafficking situation. An actual labor trafficking situation typically looks like somebody has come across the border and maybe not knowing what to do from that point, gets picked up by somebody who owns some kind of ranch or other kind of agricultural business. Here in Northern California, it seems to me like that's one of the big ones. They'll take them to their ranch and say, hey, I'll help you out. I'm going to pay you. And here's a place that you can live. and then takes their documents and says, okay, well, now that I've got you, you're not going anywhere. You can't leave. You need to work this farm for me, and I'm going to pay you a pittance. And if you try to report this, I'm going to have you deported. That's forced fraud or coercion right there. And that is a labor trafficking situation. So sex trafficking, and this is what I spend most of my time on at work. I have a lot of sex trafficking cases. When you see the victim origin, this is across the board, guys. 54% of them come from the United States. People seem to think that this is a foreign issue, but it's not. My cases, 90% of them come from the US, almost all of them. I have had one juvenile sex trafficking case that does not involve a US citizen, just one. So this is a domestic problem for sure. And it's not a new problem. A lot of people haven't heard of sex trafficking or even human trafficking until maybe the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, but this has been going on forever. You look at these numbers from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is another agency that we partner with quite a bit. Back in the early 2000s, there were 10,000 reports of missing children possibly involved in some kind of prostitution, which, you know, since they're under the age of 18 means human trafficking automatically. That's a big number, right? And again, you look at the ethnic breakdown, it's all across the board. So real quick, what domestic sex trafficking is, and I kind of already alluded to this, is adults or children who are being forced or coerced into having sex with strangers for money. That's what it is at the end of the day. Again, sometimes it's not a physical force. It could just be manipulation, but tell you what, these pimps are good. They know how to manipulate these girls. They are the smooth talkers, and they will find whatever hole it is in that girl's life and fill it in order to make that girl then want to go along with this plan. This is everywhere. I work in Oakland. It's a big problem there, but it's a big problem everywhere. Anywhere where there are usually men willing to pay for sex, you're going to find prostitution, which means you're going to find human trafficking. This is in the nice towns. This is in the big cities. It's in impoverished areas, and it's in wealthy areas. It's everywhere. Most of the victims, but not all of them, come from unstable environments. However, I have had several cases where the victims have come from very nice, well-to-do, two-parent homes. So again, it's across the board. You can't say just because you live in a nice house with your mom and dad and they're great parents and you have everything you need that you're not going to fall prey to this. The more vulnerable girls do fall prey a little easier, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen in nicer areas as well. Average age of entry into becoming a victim of human trafficking is about 14. Again, I've seen them as young as 12. And I know a girl, she's one of my girls, as I call her. After I start working a case with somebody, they're always my girls, and I stay in touch with a lot of them. She was 10 when her mother started pimping her out because her mom was a meth addict. Sex trafficking of foreign victims, it's a little different situation. At the end of the day, it's still these individuals are having to have sex with strangers for money, but they usually get sucked in by a different type of person, not necessarily a pimp. Usually it's someone they know from the country they came from, or they answered an ad for employment in the US and are kind of suckered into coming out here to do this kind of work. Now, sometimes, actually, oftentimes, the women who come over, especially from Asia, which is what we see a lot here in the US, come out to the US knowing exactly what they're going to be doing. They're told, you're going to come to the US, you're going to work in a massage parlor, but you're also going to be having sex with these men. And to them, that's still a better deal than staying where they are, which is a really horrible thought. We still try to get these girls help, even when they say that they knew what they were coming to do. And so it isn't actually trafficking. And I think that there's a large population in there that have been trafficked, but they just don't want to admit it. They're afraid of law enforcement. Where they come from, law enforcement is corrupt, and so they don't want to say anything. So where is prostitution found? Anywhere. I already talked about just on the streets. It's called the Blade. It's in strip clubs, truck stops, casinos. When a new casino was being built in the North Bay several years ago, everybody was very concerned it's going to bring in more prostitution. And guess what? It has. Although I don't think you're going to get anybody to actually admit that, but it definitely has. It's in clubs, escort services. It's pretty much everywhere, right? So we have this thing, the sex when is it sex trafficking versus prostitution? I think, oh, I thought there's going to be another little thing in there. So sometimes there are adults who decide that they want to, on their own volition, have sex with strangers for money. That's prostitution. It's not a federal crime. I think it's probably a poor career choice, but we're not going to do anything about it. Although if they ask for help, we're going to help them. The problem, though, is that even if you have an adult who has done this on their own volition, is out there because they want to be, or they're making money, there's still a high likelihood that they can get into a trafficking situation because there's probably some vulnerability in their life that made them make that decision to begin with. And so pimps see that. They see those vulnerabilities, and they might end up convincing that girl that they're better off with him because he's going to protect them and manage their money and all that kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden she's under his control, and every penny that she's making is going to him. And if she doesn't do exactly what he says, I guarantee that there's going to be some kind of physical force used against her in order to make her stay in that position. So who are the pimps? It could be anybody. It could be a neighbor, gang member. It could be this guy in the white coat, although I've never seen a guy like that. But you know, they are out there. The guys who want to kind of look the part. And sadly, because of popular culture, some people think that's glamorous, and it helps suck in some of these girls. One thing that drives me absolute nuts is how they glamorize pimps and just the prostitution culture. It's one reason there are more victims now than ever, I believe, is because of pop culture. Could be a family member, just like my girl who started getting victimized when she was 10 by her mother, and it can be a female. I've worked cases of female pimps. So talking about the whole glamorization of pimps, you may not know it, but way back in 2010, there was a players' ball in Oakland where they gave trophies to the best pimps. And this guy in the middle here, this Mac Main, up-and-coming player of the year, that was one of my cases. And in fact, when we searched his house the next day, we found his trophy that I wanted to keep, by the way, and they wouldn't let me.
There's a question in chat. With the Super Bowl coming next year, talk to us. What kind of an opportunity is that for the exploitation of young women and young boys?
Very good question. So thank you for that. I I can't even remember how long ago it was since I've been doing this so long, but a long, long time ago, I was talking to a good friend of mine who worked in our Reno office about hot August nights, which many people here in the Bay Area are familiar with. And what we came to realize is that pimps were taking the girls from the Bay Area to Reno for hot August nights. And not to see the cool cars, but because there were a lot of tourists there, maybe men who are away from their families who are then looking for opportunities to pick up a prostitute. That's kind of how the whole Super Bowl human trafficking initiative got started. It was way back then with us working hot August nights. We know that anytime there is a big event where people are traveling into a certain location and staying in a hotel room, sometimes away from their family and looking to party, there is opportunities for a pimp to make money. However, with the Super Bowl, we don't really see it as much as we do with some of the other events, because look at hotel prices during a Super Bowl. They're sky high, right? You can't get, normal people can't get a hotel room without paying tons and tons of money. So these pimps also don't necessarily want to bring their girls somewhere where they're going to have to spend all their profits on a hotel room. What we do see is that the girls who are already in San Francisco or the Bay Area for the Super Bowl, they're going to be advertising more, and they're going to get a lot more of the out-of-state customers than they typically would. So we don't see necessarily travel with the pimps to that location for the Super Bowl, just because it's incredibly expensive for them and they don't need to do that. There's other places they can make money, but the ones who are here locally will be very busy. All right, so the child exploitation side, some people may remember this song. It's Jethro Tull. And some of the words are sitting on a park bench, eyeing little girls with bad intent. Does that ring any bells to anybody?
Yeah.
Talking about, right? It's talking about this just total creeper, right? And back in the day, that's what we thought. But it's no longer a park bench. These guys are all online, and you know, it's now an electronic park bench, really. And so most of the people in my squad are doing work in cyberspace, because that's where the bad guys are these days. So what we're seeing in cyberspace, what's the threat? It's all of it. It's every single thing that we work on our squad is online, including human trafficking, because these pimps are recruiting girls off of sites such as Instagram on a regular basis. The technology, it's, you know, whatever sites kids are on, social networking, instant messaging, video chat, online gaming, which is a really big one. And a lot of parents think that their kids are safe if they're just on gaming sites, but they're not. When we talk about internet predators, these are the guys, you know, back in the day, there was a show called To Catch a Predator. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to internet predators. Way back in the day, I was one of those undercovers who pretended to be a 14-year-old online and would chat with these guys until they said, hey, do you want to meet up? And the intent of meeting up was for them to have sex with the 14-year-old, and then we would arrest them. There's other people on my squad who do that stuff now. But it's made it really easy for these guys that they no longer have to actually physically be in a place that kids are, because they can be on the internet, be anywhere they want to be and anyone they want to be. They don't have to, you know, look like a 60-year-old male from Connecticut. They can look like a cool 17-year-old kid from Oakland, and it's going to draw these kids in. So this is kind of interesting. This is an old ad from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I love this because it's so true. He's handsome, witty, charming, friendly, and a child molester. You would never know it, right? Check this out. That almost looks like the same guy, right? This is a case I worked many years ago. This guy who was a psychologist for a local hospital, was meeting girls online and would tell them, hey, yeah, well, I'm a psychologist, so if you've got problems, why don't you talk to me about them? And was drawing girls in that way. This guy is a monster. He would eventually pay for these girls to fly out to the Bay Area, and then was pretty much doing sexual torture on them. It was awful. These are the kind of things that he had in his possession. I'm not going to let you see that too long. Terrible, terrible person. But hey, he looks charming and handsome, and these girls thought that they could trust him because he was a psychologist and they could talk to him about their problems. And that's what we see online all the time. It's scary. So some of the signs that you might notice in somebody else that they're being groomed online for this kind of thing are unexplained gifts. We see that a lot, where the guys might mail them, an Amazon, or send them an Amazon gift card, and all of a sudden this girl has, some cute new shoes. And where did those come from? They're very secretive on their cell phone. They seem to kind of isolate themselves a little more. Get upset. Well, this is probably any teenager, right? Getting upset if they're unable to be online. But if they're, if they just seem to be really tethered to their phone or the internet, and it's completely unexplained, that might be something you want to look at. Different sites and apps where these guys are finding these kids, everything. Whatever sites kids are on, they're on also. Instagram, this is the biggest one right now. It used to be Facebook. Kids no longer use Facebook, only us old folks use it. The kids are now using Instagram, and while it's the hot popular thing, bad guys are going to be on it too. The pimps are all over Instagram. Kik is a really big one that they're using for messaging. And Omegle, I have to put this up just because it freaks me out so much. It says on the top of this, talk with strangers, like it's a good thing. I mean, how scary is that? And this is what our kids are getting on purpose. This is perfect for internet predators. There's so many different apps out there and websites and all that kind of stuff. It's impossible to keep up with what all the trends are. Go online. I just this morning Googled top media sites for kids, and I got this site. And then after this, it shows you exactly what sites kids are using and why it's an issue. I'll tell you one of the big ones, and it has been for a while, is Discord, which seems like almost all kids are on. Seems like a pretty harmless gaming site. We get a ton of cases where kids are getting hit up by internet predators on this site. So to minimize risk, just know that anywhere you go on the internet, kids can be prey. And when I say kids, I mean all kids. I don't mean 14-year-old girls. I mean boys and girls from when they first get on the internet to when they become adults. And then they're still prey, but maybe not quite as much. But all kids are susceptible. Make sure kids aren't using their personal information on these sites. It's a good thing to just Google your name every once in a while, see what comes up. Make sure that there's no personal information about you out there. Biggest thing, don't add people who you don't know as your friends. Kids do this all the time. It's like there's a competition, who has the most friends on Instagram, and so you get a friend request from somebody or a follow request from somebody. Even if you don't know them, these kids will likely go ahead and accept that request. And that could be from an internet predator, it can be from somebody who's trying to sextort them, it could be from a pimp. You don't know. They should never ever accept requests from people they don't know. Kids also need to know that picture that is sent from the stranger that it's, some 17-year-old cute boy from their own neighborhood is very well likely not. You can be anyone you want to be on the internet. It might be some, really gross 84-year-old from Arkansas, which is the case that we had. So just, they can't believe anything they hear or see on the internet as well. Cyber Tip Line is run by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC. You can report any suspicious behavior to them online, and it can be anonymous. And please encourage people to do that. If a kid tells you that they had a chat with somebody who just seemed really creepy and they don't really know what to think about it, just report it, because us having that screen name might link us to other cases, because this guy is not doing it to just one person. So the more that kind of behavior gets reported, the better our cases can be. I am really running out of time. Need to talk about sextortion, because this is the biggest thing. We get, I would say, probably 10 tips a week on our squad about people being sextorted, mostly minors. Typically what happens is that someone will accept a friend request or a follow request from somebody that they don't know online. They start chatting with this person who usually appears to be some attractive looking person that's similar to their own age. They quickly turn it into a sexual conversation and request images. Almost as soon as the victim sends images, the conversation changes. And now it's someone, maybe not even they're not even pretending to be that person that they said they were at the beginning, just saying, okay, you now need to send me money, otherwise I'm going to send this information out to, or these images out to all your friends and family. And maybe they'll have a screenshot of that person's friend list, so they know that they're not actually joking. They have that information. Happens every single day. Oftentimes these kids are, of course, scared to death. They start sending money. The problem is, as soon as you send money, now they know that they've got their hooks into you, and they can ask for more and more and more money, and they won't stop. So as soon as somebody gets that first sextortion request for money, they need to stop talking to them immediately and report it and talk to their parents. Okay. Well, now I know what I was going to say with this slide. Sorry. So if you see someone who all of a sudden doesn't want to have anything to do with social media, stops using their laptop or their phone whatsoever, and just seems really reserved, it could be because this is going on and they don't know how to deal with it. Or all of a sudden they're getting a text and they seem nervous to even look at their phone, and just completely withdraws. These kids are probably having the worst time of their lives trying to deal with this if they don't tell anybody about it. In fact, suicide risk for sextortion cases is huge. We've had several in the Bay Area, and it's such a gut punch. These poor kids, they don't know what to do. We need to tell them that it's okay to tell your parents. Parents need to be informed what the issue is and take this stuff seriously. Kids need to know, do not send money. It's just going to make matters worse. They might think that, okay, I'll just do this. I'll send them this gift card that I got for my birthday and everything will be fine. But it won't be. It'll just make it worse. Save all the messages so that us in law enforcement can go back and maybe do something about this. Do not have any further communication with these people. Just block all your accounts, set up new ones, and report this. It's a huge problem. Again, we've had several suicides because of sextortions. And it's already, suicide is the second leading cause of death in our young people in the US right now. Clearly, there's more mental health issues than just the sextortion, but if we could even put a little bit of a dent on it because it's so preventable, then we need to do it. There's a lot of good resources online about sextortion and how to prevent it. And I encourage everyone, kids, parents, teachers, to get educated about the issue. I will tell you that what we see is that the majority of the individuals who are doing the sextortion attempts are from out of this country. We see it, a lot of the individuals being in the Philippines, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, some other places. So unfortunately, oftentimes we can't actually prosecute these cases. We do work with these other countries to try to do something about it, but we will take the report and at least try to do something about it for sure. And we will also make sure when we get a report of a child being involved in a sextortion attempt, we make sure that we get mental health resources to that kid, because it is such an awful thing to think that your reputation is going to get ruined and everybody in your school and your family is going to see these pictures of you. I mean, I can't even imagine how these kids feel. It's terrible. So what can we do in general, not just with sextortion, but with the threat against our kids on a daily basis? Fight technology with technology is one of the things, especially if you have younger kids, maybe ones who are getting their first cell phones. There's certain apps that you can put on their phones so they can't go to certain sites, or maybe block who they can actually contact on their phone. There's a lot of technology out there that we can use. Be educated. Know what the top sites are right now that the kids are going to, because whatever the kids are going to is what the bad guys are going to as well. So you need to be aware of those and check your kids' phones every once in a while. Make sure that there's no bad stuff on there. Anytime you go online, and this applies to really all of us, understand that there's risks out there and that the people that you're talking to may not be who they seem. Lastly, and this is, I think, very important for both the child exploitation side and the human trafficking side, is know what a healthy relationship is. These girls who get wrapped up with pimps, a lot of times these pimps make it seem like they're in some kind of boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. But it doesn't look like a normal boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. These people are controlling. They're forcing these kids to have sex with strange men. They're taking all the money. They're maybe telling them when they can eat, when they can sleep, what they can wear. That's not a healthy relationship. But unless you actually know what a healthy relationship is, you may not even recognize it until it's too late and you're wrapped up in this. I think if we taught our kids in school, maybe, fourth grade or so, what a healthy relationship is and what it's not, so that they recognize the signs, maybe they won't get wrapped up in these so much. These are some of the internet resources. NCMEC is great. Polaris, FBI, we've got some resources there too. That's just the NCMEC site. We've got, and this is FBI, and I'm running through this because I know we only have a few minutes and we probably have more questions. There's so much information. I apologize that I had to run through everything. But if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them now. And I can read it. It says, how can we help make the demand for prostitution go down? How do we make it clear prostitution is not okay in the Bay Area? What are the consequences? And can we have rewards for reporting, such as $100 for tips that result in a conviction? So demand for prostitution is definitely an issue, because again, if there's prostitution, there's human trafficking. A lot of local agencies will do operations focused on reducing the demand, where we put undercover female officers, we put ads for them online. Of course, we try to make it so that it doesn't look like them. And then we arrest anyone who makes a date with them and comes to the site. Sadly, I have not seen these individuals necessarily kind of learn their lesson. The recidivism rate is quite high with these individuals. Honestly, I don't know if we can reduce the demand. They're essentially sex offenders. And the reason we have a sex offender registry is because that we know that sex offenders will continue to offend no matter what you do. You throw them in jail, they get out of jail the next day, they're going to offend. Johns, it's the same thing. It kind of doesn't matter what you do, they're going to continue to offend. All we can do is try to slow them down a little bit. And even if we stop one or two from doing it again, I mean, that's great. I think that's all we can do.
Now, Marty, how did you get into this? How did you do this 25 years ago? Did you wake up and say, I have to be an FBI agent? Did you have a parent, a teacher, a mentor? Tell us about that.
I was always interested as a kid in detective novels. I read all the Agatha Christie's, loved Sherlock Holmes, Nancy Drew, all that stuff just always really interested me. I didn't have anyone in my family who had been in law enforcement or any kind of investigation related career, but it's just something that always interested me. When I got in college, I thought I wanted to get into politics and foreign affairs specifically, but realized towards the end of my schooling that that's not really what I wanted to do, and I'd love to be an FBI agent. Never thought I'd actually get in, but I figured I would apply, and then once I didn't get hired, then I would apply for a local agency. So of course I was thrilled when I got through and became an agent.
Now, why exploitation? Why human trafficking? Talk to us. Let us know how that happened.
I really just fell into that. I was on a violent crime squad when I first got in the bureau. I was investigating bank robberies, fugitives, and so forth. And then my supervisor pulled me aside one day and said that the bureau was starting a new program called Innocent Images, which was all about child exploitation and trying to stop internet predators. And he asked me if I'd be interested in doing it, and said, sure. You know, I'm a newer agent. Sounds interesting. I'll give it a whirl. And then I never left. That's when it became clear that that was kind of my calling, was to do whatever I could to protect kids and our most vulnerable population.
And do you have personal relationships, as you've alluded to, with some of your girls, or, you know, how does that work?
I do. I tell my girls that if they're trying to get out of the life, if they're still not out of it, but if they're trying, if they don't give up on themselves, I'll never give up on them either. It is really hard for some of these girls, like the one who started when she was 10, for instance, to kind of reinvent themselves. It's very difficult, and their mentality has to do a complete 180 because they're so used to just being used. They're a commodity. And that's not something that you can change overnight. So they know that I'm always there for them, and they can call me anytime. After I have worked cases with these girls and put the bad guys in jail, I keep in contact with them because they still have a lot of healing to do. And I want to help them get on a better path. One of my girls, she calls me on my birthday every year. I just had happy hour. I went and had margaritas with a girl that testified in a case and it was back in 2009, and she's 30 now. I'm like, hey, we can actually go out and have adult beverages together now, which was just so amazing. So it's nice to see these girls, heal and live productive lives.
What would you say to a young woman who's thinking about all this? How do they go about making contact? Does the FBI go out and recruit? Are they at colleges, community colleges? What do they do?
So as far as when you said thinking of this, getting into the FBI.
Getting into the FBI,
yeah.
And we can bifurcate and have another question about some things that are not happening right. Who do they call?
Right. Well, I'll say as far as getting into the FBI, yes, we do recruit. We go to career fairs, we go to schools. If someone's interested, they should go to our website, fbi.gov, to learn more about what we do. And then the application is on another government site called usajobs.gov, usajobs.gov. If you're in high school, for instance, and interested in the FBI, just make sure you get good grades. Get into a college. It doesn't have to be Harvard. I went to a state school, but you need to have a 4-year degree. And then after you have your degree, you need just 2 years of work experience in any kind of field, anything that interests you. We like having people with diverse backgrounds. You don't have to get a criminal justice degree. Again, mine was in political science. Can't really do much with that, right? Unless you teach or become a politician. But just something that interests you, and also something to fall back on, maybe if you don't get into the Bureau, or after you retire, if you want to go into another field. But it gives that such a diverse background. Once you get in, we have people who are psychiatrists who then become agents, and they bring unique experiences. We have accountants, teachers, who are really good at public speaking. Everybody brings in something different, and that's what we like about the Bureau. So don't be afraid to kind of go after something that you're really interested in and still become an FBI agent.
Now, what if you're a girl or a boy that's in trouble and you don't have good relationships with your mom and dad, or, you don't know who to call? What do you do?
First off, if you are in immediate danger, call 911. And please don't be afraid to. I think people sometimes don't use that resource when they should. If you are being held somewhere against your will, or you don't feel like you can leave, or you are in harm's way, call 911. If you're not in immediate danger, you can always call the FBI. Depending on the situation, they might just patch you through to me. Our operations center, when they get a call about child exploitation or human trafficking, oftentimes they'll just call me directly and say, hey, can you talk to this person? You can also just make a report to the FBI if it's not urgent, saying that you're in a particular situation and you would like a call back, and this is the situation. Or maybe you don't even want to call back, but you just want somebody to know about it, so we can start doing some digging and then maybe get back to you at some other point. Or if you want to call about a friend, we'll take those reports and we'll do some digging and see if there's something that we can do about it. You can also call the National Human Trafficking Hotline, or make a report online. There's a lot of different ways, but the important thing is to make a report somewhere. It will get to people who can do something about it. Also, if you can have as much detailed information as possible. If your friend is in a bad situation, if you tell us who the individuals are who are involved, if you have names, phone numbers, license plates, anything like that, that will definitely help us be able to take more action.
And finally, parents. What should parents do? How can they balance intrusion versus protection?
That's a very good question. And I think a complicated one, because I think that there's a really fine line there, right? And I think most kids will think everything is more of an intrusion, right? So I think just having open lines of communication is really the most important part. And maybe if the kids understand, because you've had these conversations with them, that there are these dangers out there, maybe they'll be more apt to go to their parents when something bad happens, or they don't feel comfortable with something. It's just that communication is so important. And parents have to kind of promise not to get mad at the kid. And I think that's a big part. If the kid's on a website they're not supposed to be on, but something they run into a really creepy guy on that website, they might not want to tell their parents about it because they weren't supposed to be there in the first place. Or if they stay out too late one night with some friends and something bad happens to them, then they may not want to tell their parent because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble for being out late. So parents have to realize that, you know, the bigger picture is that there's a bad guy out there that your kid needs protected from, not that they stayed out past curfew.
You know, you are an extraordinary SheHero for our audience. And we want to thank you for being able to come forward to talk about your work and to talk about you. And
it's my pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Okay, back over to me. I'll wrap things up. Thank you everyone for coming. Marty, that was absolutely fascinating, totally informative, and must viewing, in my view, by every parent in America. So we are so grateful to have so much content all in one place that can be so helpful for so many families. So thank you again, and we will see you all next time. So SheHeroes is over and out. Good night, everyone.